when I don't have to be there to tell you to put on your PPE. Your mate beside you is telling you to put on your PPE because it's the right thing to do. And when you get there, that's the best. But to get there sometimes, it could be a battle. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge I think you'd see in the industry.
It's the promised land, right? Hello, everyone. In this episode of Billion Dollar Projects, we'll speak with Dave Speerbrecker, or as he's most commonly known, Safety Dave. Dave is the GM of support services at Thyssen Mining and has spent the last 36 years of his career primarily focused on supporting their safety programs as a contract service provider to the mining industry. In this episode, we'll speak with Dave about some of the amazing projects he's had an opportunity to work on and the core challenge he's focused on, which is keeping his people safe in the field. The most important thing to come out of the mine is the miner. And I'm excited to jump in. So let's jump in. Dave Speerbrecker, welcome and thanks for joining us here today on the Billion Dollar Projects podcast.
Hey, my pleasure. Looking forward to the chat, Wes.
I just want to kick off with a question. What is Thyssen Mining? And your role as general manager of support services, what does that actually mean? Because it feels like that sounds like essential services.
It is. And, it's something I grew into with my time with Thyssen. It's really interesting. Today is, March 6th, and it's actually my 36th year anniversary with Thyssen today too as well. So what can I tell you? It's been a journey. It's today. Yeah. So it's the day I got hired on by Thyssen way back in 1989. So yeah.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah.
Not that common.
No, it is not. That'll kind of lead me to talk a little bit about Thyssen Mining as a whole and what keeps somebody like me here and interested in working with them. We're really diverse. We work all across North America. So I've had opportunities to work all across Canada, into the United States. I've been into the UK for some work that we were supporting too as well. And I've met just tons of great people. I've been to great places, and hey, not everything was easy and smooth, but I got to do it in someplace cool with some different people and meeting some new people. So that's kind of what kept me here. But what are we? We are an underground mining contractor. We spend our time getting people to where the ore body is, or opening up that cavern for storage of materials. We sink the shafts that do it. Almost every potash shaft here in Saskatchewan was touched by us in one way or another, sunk by us. And then even the current new ones that are here in the prairies are also part of our forte too as well, which we were heavily involved with. A bit of a interesting story. So there's the one group out at the potash sector that just sunk 2 new shafts. We were actually the contractor that sunk the first 2 shafts for them. And we actually got to, do the abandonment on them too as well. So a full circle of life within that same body of ore. So yeah, kind of an interesting history to be around too. So it kind of really keeps you engaged and wanting to see where else we can go with all this. So yeah.
And so in that 36 years, were you there when you sunk them and then sunk the next 2 and decommissioned?
Unfortunately not. I was not even thought of yet. I was just born when those 2 shafts were being sunk, but I did meet some gentlemen who had been on that shaft sink back in the day and got a chance to work with them and hear their stories about that particular job. And then of course we started this next one for them, and hopefully I get to see how big that one becomes over the next little while too. So that's cool. And a lot of the companies I worked with have been part of my learning and part of my experience too. Not only has Thyssen been great to work with as far as learning and being able to do cool things, but working with the companies, the clients always have something to offer that you learn from and take to the next job. So yeah,
for sure. What I'm most excited about here is that we've had a number of awesome guests come through over the course of the last year. This might actually be the first contractor / service provider persona, right? And the voice of the contractor is really important in the business we're building. So really excited to get your perspective. So tell me, general manager support services, like I can only imagine, I don't know if you can get more of an all-encompassing title, but what does that mean?
It's a great position. I'd worked my way up to become the director of safety, and I had a really great team working for me. I still have a great team in the safety group working for me, and that's part of my umbrella. So as the general manager of support services, I kind of look after, make sure that the safety managers have what they need, the purchasing team has what they need, the shop has what they need to do their job, asset managers, and as well as the tech services group too. So do I have a really strong knowledge of all those different divisions? No. I have a really great team that runs them, but my job is kind of like the snowplow to just make sure that they have everything they need to make their function or their part of the job work well. So it's a forever learning exercise too, because there's other things that just get thrown in the mix as you're going along too, right? So from a leaking toilet in the office that needs to be dealt with to, hey, I got to run the site and give them a hand with orientation because we're hiring all these people. So it's a little bit of everything all the time. It's hey, just keeps you dynamic, man.
Just for my own benefit, for Thyssen, like what would be an example of like physical field work that you're doing commonly? And then equally, like what would be that shop work that you're doing?
So let's just talk a little about the field work. So Thyssen will get hired for their expertise to come in and do some shaft sinking work to get to the ore body, to help develop that structure, the ability to handle the materials, and get that part of the mine built. And then sometimes we'll just hand the keys back to the client and they'll do the rest of the work from there, but we'll get them started. Or they'll call us to come in and do a bunch of lateral development. So if you can imagine, we're using some pretty robust equipment that's used in a hard rock environment where we load it with drill holes, load it with explosives, blast it, muck it out, secure the ground, repeat. So we're doing this in like 4-meter drives or 16 feet at a time. So the equipment, once it's done, comes back home to the shop. And that's where our guys will tear it down, put it back together again, make it all kind of new, and get ready for the next job to come along. So that's kind of what the shop guys do. And then, stuff's got to be shipped. So somebody's got to manhandle that. And then somebody's got to receive that. So, dealing with the logistics of supporting the shop or the sites. So it's interesting you should say that, because my thought's always been that I'm the service provider for the sites. They're my customer. So whatever they need, we're going to try and do our best to get it to them in the best shape we can in the time frame we have.
You can't fully appreciate how important safety is on site and how important the quality of the equipment and the inspection of the material and all of this is until you're physically out there. You can't fully appreciate that. And so the work and my background has been almost exclusively on the contractor side, selling and servicing, building oil refineries, gas plants, pipelines, steel mills, power plants, all of the heavy industrial infrastructure. So I can fully appreciate the importance of making sure that the work that happens in the shop is in full support of the safety and success of those in the field. You can't afford to take any shortcuts or have anything less than top quality work coming out of the shop.
No. So if you've ever been near a mine, you've seen all the mill work and the buildings and structures, and it's not uncommon that we'll actually do all the earthworks around where the shaft is. We'll do all the concrete pouring. We'll do that sub-collar work to get that first bit of excavation. And our team will actually put the steel and the head frame structure up too as well. So, hey, I can appreciate the challenges you face working in the steel industry, doing steel erection, because that's no easy task when it's howling wind and crane operators yelling at you and you want to get the steel all set. And yeah. Keep it safe though. Yeah.
So, you've got a reputation as being, here in my research before the podcast, I understand you're Safety Dave. And, Safety Dave, I imagine that there's a story there, and I would love to be called Safety West. I think it's a really important value, and I think that most of the market and definitely most of our customer base is like an extreme focus on safety, obviously. Why Safety Dave?
Interesting question. So when you introduced me, it's Dave Speerbrecker, right? And what's easier to remember, Safety Dave or Dave Speerbrecker? So I kind of just use it as a moniker to sort of introduce myself when I was doing training with people, and people just seem to remember that better. And I thought it was a great way to represent the company. Hey, I'm Safety Dave. Everybody's heard of Super Dave, right? But I'm the opposite of Super Dave. I'm Safety Dave. And it kind of just stuck, and people just started calling me that. Now that I switched roles, I don't get it as much anymore, but there's still people who still call me Safety Dave. And if I'm doing training or whatever, I'm still Safety Dave. So people can sort of remember. It's easier to say than Dave Speerbrecker, right? So yeah, kind of stuck. So, but yeah, doing it for 20 some years, yeah, gonna get something stuck to you.
Clients know you by Safety Dave too?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
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 Hey,
Yeah.
that's awesome. A question for you. You've been involved with the Robinson Butane Storage Cavern, Robinson Butane Storage Cavern. Can you tell me a little bit about that project? From what I understand, it's super interesting.
It was a really great project to work on. So in this particular case, the offshoot of a refinery is butane. And it's used as part of the performance or making of gasoline or wherever in their manufacturing process. So typically, lots of times when you see a stack burning it off, it's a waste, so it's lost. So they'll keep it on tanks in surface, but you can only keep so much stuff on surface. So they wanted someplace to store this item and this material underground. So they discovered they had a fairly stable sandstone structure near the refinery. And we came in and we excavated it. So then it's kept underneath enough pressure to liquefy it. And then they just pump it out when they need it and pump it in when they're not needing it. Don't quote me, but I think it was around 2 million barrels, because you're dealing with refinery. You don't deal in cubic feet of material. You deal with barrels of material. And it was around 2 million barrels they can now store in this underground facility.
Yeah, always been interested in these caverns. Like, is there testing involved before you put the product down?
A lot, yeah. So it's interesting. So when we come in and we do a shaft sink, we come in and we drill, blast, and blow it all up, and break up the rock, then pour concrete, slip it. In this case, they brought in what they call a blind bore drill, and they just drilled down. And as they were going down, they slipped an 8-foot diameter pipe to the level they were. So when they got to the level they were supposed to be, pump all the mud out. Now we've got an 8-foot steel pipe, and now we've got to get all our mining gear. But first off, we have to go down to that bottom of that hole, cut the steel out of the way, and then start to excavate. So it was a real interesting technical challenge, I think, because you don't do this. There's no playbook for this. This is something you JHA out, or, write up some procedures and do some risk analysis before you do it. And we were successful getting it done. So it's just interesting to see how we did it, and then how quickly we actually finished excavating it once we got everything into place. So
who's responsible for the engineering and technical component of that? Because it's not like standing a piece of steel on a pile cap. It's something that's in some cases maybe never been done before. So
it'll be a joint, we'll kind of be told what the strategy is, but we'll bring in a few different experts in that sort of field to assist with that type of program. You'll want somebody who's got some ground control specialty knowledge. We'll make sure that we're looking at proper ventilation. We got the proper hoisting equipment in place. Just making sure everybody's safe as far as getting up and down and out of it. All kinds of gas monitoring needed to occur, because you just don't know what you're going to encounter when you go into a location like that. But yeah, there's a variety of different people that are involved in how this works. So, the client was heavily involved, their engineering team, our engineering team, and then some outsourced engineering teams too as well.
Really cool. Any other, similar or equally exciting projects you've been part of?
I think every project Thyssen has done has been interesting in its own right, but there are some that just sort of stand out in your mind. Working up in the north in the uranium industry, that's a whole nother methodology of mining too as well. And working with that client has been a great experience. We've been working with them since the late 80s. So long-term relationships and long-term building with different relationships of the local indigenous communities too as well. And then just learning that mining process and how we can support them, and just understanding about being a nuclear energy worker too as well. It's just not like you can go in there and start kicking dirt. You've got to protect yourself in a variety of different ways. So those ones have been really interesting and great learnings too as well.
How does the mining, I don't know much about uranium mining, other than I like the name of the, I like the name of the towns where they exist in some cases. But how does it differ?
It's a high grade ore, right? So in two of the mines we work at, it's high grade ore, and the methodologies of extraction are designed to prevent exposure to you, the worker, and also make sure you don't spill it, because anytime you spill, now you got to clean it up too as well. So one of the operations, they use a jet boring type system. So they'll have a long tunnel that we've developed, and they'll drill up into it, case it and all that. And then they'll drill up into it and inject a high pressure water to break up the rock, pull that down, goes into a pipe, goes into a sag mill, gets broken up into surface and trucked off to get made into what it needs to be made into. And then at the other one, they use what they call a raised bore drill, where they'll drill down from one level to another, pull that bit up, and then just catch that material as it falls. Now that's, again, is all done via remote. So you're not even on a piece of equipment to grab it. You're using remote control to operate a large, if you can imagine a large front end loader, but make it low profile. You're using one of those, but you're operating by remote control. So
how do you keep your crews safe in that environment? Is it, when you think about your, corporate safety program, your onboarding, your, field level hazard assessments, do they differ much from, mining potash to mining uranium?
yeah, it would. Potash has its own challenges, but it's typically done on one plane. It's nice and warm. Whereas where you're working in uranium, it's a little bit cooler, it's wetter. You're on multiple levels and high ventilation to try and, the solution to pollution is dilution. Same philosophy here too. So ALARA, right? As low as reasonably achievable. So by utilizing some of those skill sets, potash has its own challenges, but then uranium has its own specific ones too as well. And all the organizations I've worked with have got great programs, and it starts off with just good training with the employees, and then good supervision, just continuing that coaching of the employees as they're in the workplace.
Dave, as a contractor, what's the most challenging problem you've had to solve in your 30 plus years with Thyssen?
Hey, there's one specific problem that's been more challenging than others, but I think it's just as you work at a site, the relationships are really key, right? So developing that culture at a project where we're sort of working together as a group can be very challenging to get. So having good leadership and integrating myself or the safety teams in with that leadership, so we're all kind of moving together, and then bringing the employees along on that same journey, that can be a real challenge to get. And if you have high turnover or you have challenging people who are working with you who are constantly turning people over, that can be part of the biggest challenge. I would think just keeping employees engaged is probably the biggest one. But once you hit that sweet spot, there's nothing finer than they're looking after each other. And that's the turning point in any project, is when I don't have to be there to tell you to put on your PPE. Your mate beside you is telling you to put on your PPE because it's the right thing to do, right? And when you get there, that's the best. But to get there sometimes, yeah, it could be a battle. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge I think you'd see in the industry. So
it's the promised land, right?
Right. Yeah.
Where it's not checking a box, but it's actually having the crews and the folks that are doing the work have a true understanding of why they're doing it and why it's important. How do you get there? That's a state that everyone wants to get to. How is it that you get there?
Well, one of my safety managers, he was a horse. He's a rodeo enthusiast, so he trained horses for years. And he was telling me one day about how he gets a horse to move over. So if he gets in between two horses, he just wants to train the horse to move over. He doesn't slap, he doesn't push or anything. He just takes his finger, pokes it into the muscle, and just holds it there for a second. And pretty soon the horse understands, oh, I just need to move over. So I don't think it's a question of being aggressive or assertive. It's just being nice, gentle pressure, constantly saying the same message and having everybody else say the same message and bring them along. There are people who just don't come along, so you move them along, right? Because I would rather you go work somewhere else and feed your family versus you getting seriously injured, having a life-changing event, and now I got to make bad phone calls. So I would much prefer to do that. But I think that is probably one of the ways to do it. But again, just having a conversation with people, treat them the way you want to be treated, right? You don't have to be an ass to make somebody change their mind or get a better focus. I don't know if that makes sense to you at all, Wes.
Yeah,
but yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
There's probably no one right answer, right? It's everybody struggles with it. I've struggled with it in the past, and uh, like celebrating and giving a positive recognition to those that are following the culture that's laid out, and making sure that the leadership, whether it's like corporate leadership or site leadership, they live by the same uh, values that we're expecting of your crews.
Yeah.
That's really important. I built facilities for a number of years for Shell. And one thing that I remember, and then they truly, it's my opinion that they truly live and breathe the safety culture. And many times you'd have like an executive come out to Northeast BC, probably fly on a private jet, put on the clean blue coveralls, the beaming white hat, and come out to site. And, they're not out at site every day, and they might walk in front, like, unintentionally break a safety rule by walking in front of a piece of equipment or doing something. We were encouraged, if we saw something like that happen, to actually ask them to stop, tell them what's going on, and ask them to like back up. And it's a very uncomfortable thing to do that to your client's senior leadership. But actually, in reality, the impact that had on them, they appreciated it, and they would take the time to say thank you, you're right. And and so feeling that buy-in, 360 is really rewarding as a contractor. So
We coach our employees to do the same thing. If you see whether it's the client or one of our own people looking to put themselves in a bad spot, use your voice, speak up, do some coaching. More people are going to thank you than not. So yeah, we see that, in our more mature operations, we see that. In some of our less than mature operations, that's still a struggle to get there.
what keeps you up at night in your role?
What keeps me up at night? Oh, a variety of different things, but an incident, somebody calling saying somebody's been hurt, right? We have processes in place to provide for the employee, but it's not just the employee that's going to be affected by that. It's the team at site that's involved. And then it's the family, right? What can we do to sort of help, bring the family together? How bad's the incident? What do we need to do for the whole project? And those are the things that keep me awake at night. Less so now that we have a strong safety culture in lots of our projects. But yeah, that's when my phone rings at night. That's what I always worry about. You're going to get that call, right? Somebody's badly hurt.
Yeah, I can fully appreciate that would be what keeps you up at night. And I assume with the scale that you have, there's 24/7 operations, 365. There's probably somebody working for Thyssen, in the field, at all times.
All the time. Yeah. So, you're always trying to be alert. You're always trying to be, ready. And not only just that, you had a piece of equipment's failed, right? And there's potential for that, or something's gone wrong. So, now that I look after kind of how is our field equipment going? All right, well, how do we fix that? I need to find another widget that's going to cost X number of dollars, and they don't make them today. They're not on the shelf at Walmart. How am I going to help this? So, those high risk things are probably more things that weigh in the back of your mind. But I think, as projects mature and we become more, I don't want to say accustomed to it, but more prepared, I think would be a better word for it. You've done some risk analysis, you've done some preparations, you put things in place, you can sleep a little better at night.
I know you mentioned the most important the most important thing to come out of the mine, and in brackets, not necessarily the product, it's definitely the miner. Why is that so important for you?
One of my leaders that I worked with for a number of years, I'd never heard the expression until, probably the last 10 years when we did a videotape of an event that occurred within our organization about a young gentleman who was badly injured, the impact had on his family. And this gentleman that I worked for used it as his closing remarks to a video we did. And I thought, why haven't I been saying this for years? This means so much. It's such a simple statement. So then I dived into it, and it's done by a French engineer. Good play. He's the one that coined that back in the 1700s. So even then, we were thinking about the safety of the miner. And I think that's probably just resonated through the last 300, 400 years, right? So yeah, it's cool. it is the most valuable commodity we have on the job site is our worker. And we need to treat them with kindness and grace and patience. They're the ones that can solve all our problems. They're the ones that are doing the work. They know the fix. We just need to ask, right? So again, use your voice, ask questions.
It's definitely playing the long game to make sure that you do things right. You live and breathe those values in the, from the boardroom all the way to like decisions on, next steps in the field. And so, what are some of the broader impacts that, like in your opinion, that safety can have on the company in terms of reputation, acquiring, retaining talent, clients, things like this?
That's one of the ones that, when we do our supervisor training, we talk about the impact of events, right? So of course, your WCB rates, if you have lots of incidents, they go up. If your rates are too high, clients won't look at you, so you can't get work. So there's all that whole economic side of it too. But I think from the other side of the whole thing, as an organization, and our senior management all agrees with this, it's the right thing to do. It's part of our moral values to make sure that we provide as safe a workplace as we can. If you have a safe workplace and people are talking about how safe it is to work there or how good it is to work there, one, we retain and also attract good talent. And that serves dividends because then everything else just sort of falls in behind it, right? So, and I, draw that line in the sand. This will not be tolerated. Also sends a strong message that ripples back out, and you keep those people that don't want working on your crews from joining you or from staying long anyway. So yeah, one, from a contracting bidding perspective, it's the right thing to do. But more importantly, it's the moral compass of our company that's really, really critical to maintain.
You called it out there from a bidding and estimating perspective. Like, I understand that you're responsible for the estimating team, and that's a piece of the whole process that's near and dear to my heart. What's that? This is where I first got into the construction industry. Was working as an individual contributor in an estimating team. Got to learn about pipe, steel, concrete, dirt, and it was like great fundamentals. So, what's that like going from looking after the shop and making sure the field has everything to then switching and looking at the future business?
It's a tough one for me. Those guys over there at Tech Services, they rock it out of the park. I just make sure they got what they need. But as we go forward, I just keep learning all the time about, okay, here's a challenge. Well, that's an interesting way of approaching it. And okay, now I see how you do your schedule. I see how you come with that. And okay, no, we're not going to have that piece of equipment, so we got to change our pricing a little bit. And then just as we prepare to submit all the hands that come together to put that package together, and then you read it and you go, holy cow, I'm so proud of what you guys have put together. This is fantastic. Because, you got the methodology, you got the schedule, you got the bill of materials that are needed. That's all been through weeks of efforts, been sorted out. And
hundreds
you can just
and
hundreds of hours. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, So when I look at it, I'm in awe because it's not something I've ever done. Now, I understand components of it, but what these guys pull together in such a short period of time, it's fascinating.
I would think that the Thyssen typical scope would be, there's not hundreds of different service providers globally that can offer these services, right?
No, there's a few competitors in the Canadian and US market. It's interesting. We've actually even collaborated with a couple of them too as well, just for some of these bigger projects because there's just too much risk for one of us to take it on.
Wow, now that's interesting.
I know, right? So we've, there's several larger contractors, and we've ourselves and another one have aligned ourselves to perform some work in the potash industry here in Saskatchewan, and we have a joint venture essentially. So it's interesting. So we both bring a set of unique skill sets to the table, and that group finds its own niche, and away they go. And it was terribly successful at K3, and it's also very successful out at the Janssen project.
That's great.
Yeah, awesome. I know, right? Yeah.
Because normally, an interface can be quite, I don't know, not another term coming to mind, but cutthroat. You're competing for the same business, and often when you have two contractors on site, one, it's like a de-risking function for the client too. And so to collaborate in that environment where you have commercials that maybe not always something you want to share, that it requires strong relationships, I imagine.
Yeah, and we have a good relationship with them too as well. We understand where each other's markets are, and we respect that too. Yeah, we'll step on each other's toes a little bit, and they'll steal from us an employee that's really good, or we'll steal from them that's got an employee that's really good. So we have that back and forth that's going, and it's surprising. I was having a conversation with a couple other, my peers in the contracting game that are safety kind of guys like me, and we all lament, we wish we could just have the same training program so that we got, the new guy that just came from over there, that we know their skill sets because they took this training, but we all got to start from scratch again and do it over again. So yeah, but it'd be nice because like the steel industry, these guys tramp around, go from job to job, wherever the shiny coin is, that's where they're going.
I often ask the question of, I mentioned that you were the first, contractor that's joined the podcast, which I'm excited about. I often ask, what makes a really great contracting organization and a project team from a contractor? But now I want to ask the flip side from your perspective, which is really important to the success of any project, is what characteristics in your view make up like a best in class client project team to work with?
So I think the leadership of that group has to be solid, right? They've got to be the ones setting the pace, setting the cadence for how things are going, and putting that line in the sand that he's going to make sure that people don't cross it or understand where we are. Having a vision and communicating that well, I think that really is really important. But also the relationship with the client, I think, is really, really important. So, if we look at like a football team, you get your O-line that protects your quarterback. Your quarterback's the team that's doing all the rock breaking. And then you got the coaching staff, and that's they're making sure they have all they need to do their stuff. Everything just has to work like a symbiotic relationship. You have to have a good relationship with the client, and your leader has to be leading the charge. And he has to have good people, taking his message down to the teams and make sure there's good information coming down. So everything just has to buzz. Everybody just has to be doing their thing to make it work. I got the tools to do the job. I got the material to get it done. The equipment's operational. I got the power to run it. I've got the directions to go in. So I've got the map to where to go, and I've got a good schedule, and I'm being looked after when I'm at camp or if I'm coming back and forth. So yeah, there's a lot to it.
So a couple things. And I think, in my development as a leader, I can see the importance of them as setting the pace and setting the cadence. And how does that actually show up for you when engaging with the client? Like, what are the types of things you see them do that set a great pace? Like, what is that?
And I'll probably get some pushback from others on this, but I always think the team that's working. So let's say I got a team that's going to be on site for the next 2 weeks. And I think it's okay to tell them, hey, in the next 2 weeks, we want to get this much done, right? Here's our goal. But I don't think you need to tell them that every day. I think you need to tell them today, this is our goal. And we need the client to also say that. I think we need to give criticism sandwiches, if you will, right? I'm going to tell you something that went really well. Okay, here's where you need to improve. And I'm going to close that off at the bottom bun saying, hey, keep up the good work, right? And lots of times, in some cases, we see the teams just kind of getting, hey, come on, you got to get to this goal. We got to get to this goal. And I think sometimes that creates goal fever, right? And people just get so focused on making sure I reach that end goal, they forget about what they're doing today and what I need to accomplish today. And if they can just accomplish today, they'll get to that no problem, right? The other one, and because we work a 24-hour cycle, is don't plan for what you need today. Plan for what your cross shift needs tonight or tomorrow. And if everybody does that for everybody, you're never scrambling to find the materials you need to do your job either. Everything's fueled. The bits and components I need are readily available, and it's not a big hassle. But if I run down areas or I don't put my services in, now I'm chasing my tail trying to catch up.
I pick out of what you said there a few things, but one of them is like the client needs to be there kind of setting the target for the week, for the month, whatever that might be. Makes me wonder, what is your favorite contract type to work under?
Yeah, that varies. We've seen lump sum, we've seen time and material, we've seen a blend of two of them, right? So I think you can work under each one of those different types of contracts fairly easily, but as long as everybody kind of agrees on where it's all going to go, and everybody's going to be that bend a little bit to make it all sort of happen. You can't just expect, well, hey, you said you're going to do it for this much, and I didn't really know there's going to be all these hardships. So there's going to be some give and take, if you will, right? And, we got to take our lumps when we deserve them. But I think also the client needs to agree that, hey, that wasn't something that was foreseen, and we'll work with you on that too as well, right? And in most cases, that's the case. But in some cases, not so much, right? So, yeah. So maintaining that relationship is key.
For sure. I think that the contract type often can tie directly into the most important part, which is safety. And then, I've seen now a couple times where clients, as a contractor, our client is looking to do like shutdown and tie-in work on high pressure piping on a lump sum basis. And not that that should change how the contractor approaches the work and the safety they take, but it applies a different level of pressure to making sure that things are done on a certain time frame. And so I've seen a couple clients do that and then immediately revert to maybe the whole project could be fixed price. That shutdown tie-in work where it's high pressure, multiple concurrent activities, and a tight timeline, we're going to do that on time and material and give everybody the space they need to do the
Yeah,
job
it's
right.
critical, right? It's critical at that stage. We bumped into that too as well. And we've even had some clients just decide, we originally was bid, let's say lump sum, and then they realize, hey, that's just not feasible, and negotiate a time and material type contract too. When you start getting concurrent work, and you've probably experienced this in the industry, when I got guys and gals doing all kinds of work at the same time, something's going to happen. And inevitably does. And that whenever we're doing concurrent work or any kind of management change hasn't been properly followed, we're going to see an event.
Dave, you've been in the industry for over 30 years. At a high level, what are some of the biggest changes you've seen, and how is technology, going to, in your view, impact, decades to come?
Technology has changed the face of mining drastically over the years, and let's just talk about the simple thing of a diesel engine. The diesel engines from 30 years ago were smoky and dirty, and they're in your ventilation system, to now some of these tier 4, tier 5 engines are uber clean, high performance engines that hardly give off any kind of emissions, and reduces your requirements for some of the ventilation too. So those are great savings. And then let's talk about BEV, like the battery operated equipment that's coming in too as well. And, those are great. They're quiet. They're, they haul uphill as much as they can downhill. The only thing is just charging them. People say, well, if they catch on fire, well, so do diesel engines catch on fire. So that one I'm not buying. But I think the only hazard I see with the electric ones is they're really quiet, so you don't hear them sneaking up on you. So, there's some challenges around that, but some of that. And then the remote control activities, the utilization of an operator operating 2 or 3 or 4 pieces of equipment sitting on the surface in a room and just switching from one piece of equipment to another while things are gone. The automation to keep you on line and grade now is fantastic. You just line up the drilling equipment. Once it reads its survey marks, you punch in your pattern, hit go, and you just stand by and let it do its job. Even cross shift, while the shift is changing, it's still working and doing its thing. So yeah, there's some pretty cool stuff that's coming out. And then in the recent, couple of years, the advent of AI coming in, and that's also helping to make us better and stronger at what we do too, right? And not just contractors, but industries as a whole.
100%. It's changed the face of the products that we build and how I do my day. OpenAI went down for a few hours about a month ago, and I was sitting here like, wow, I have a reliance on sharing my thoughts and formulating text with OpenAI because I felt like I got downshifted into third gear.
It's like going back to dial up, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. Cool. Well, I got one last question.
Sure.
I think now more than ever, we see the importance of the resource sector to North American security and the future economies of North America. And so when you think about the workforce of the future and attracting folks into the trades and into the craft and into leadership roles, like what message do you share with them to get them excited about joining?
So I have a couple of opportunities in front of me that I've regularly participated in. One's with the Saskatchewan Mining Association, and they actually do a teachers tour. So last year, we actually had the teachers come spend an afternoon with us at our shop looking at equipment, giving them knowledge about the mining industry and what things are out there for they can share with the students. So if they want to look at a future of doing mining, what can I do within mining, right? Not only just the equipment side of things or being a miner per se, but also the administrative support side. And then we've been able to also work as far as going up to some of the northern communities and talking to the grades 7 and 8s. And the SMA sets up this whole exhibit of geology and HR and safety and emergency response and maintenance. So I think exposing people to it is at a young age, just to take some of that stigmatism away from heavy construction or industry, that, hey, it's a great place to come work. And then we were attending the CIM in Montreal in May, and we always have the student one day. The students come from this, and I love having a chance to just talk to them. We've gotten some great long-term employees that have come from that event. So I think, just again, use your voice, talk to people, share.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. That's for sure.
You
Dave,
do need a lot of people.
I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us today. This was really nice. And I'm glad that we finally got the voice of the contractor, which is an incredibly important voice to have be heard. And I appreciate all the perspective and the lessons that you've learned, the projects you've been involved with.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the patience to get us here to this part. And I'm glad we have the contractor's voice out there. It's an important one. It's a big component to help all this industry get to where it needs to be. Without us, where would everybody else be? So it's
agreed.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. I like it. It's fun.